Awesome. Well, welcome back to another episode of Unlearn with us. Today, joining me is the wonderful Catie Clapp. Welcome, Catie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm so excited. So, Catie and I met years ago through a mutual friend, Donna Forbes. She seems to be the connector with everybody. And I went to a jockey party and I bought some clothing and got to know Catie and got to know about jockey person to person and ended up joining that group and selling some clothes as well while I was off on maternity leave, and then started playing mall hockey, and our children played hockey together. And it's just been an amazing journey to have Catie, just a fingertip away or a meeting for coffee to talk about all these things that are going on in our lives. Um, Catie is a teacher, high school teacher here in Ottawa, and she is also the co-owner of Willow Wellness, which she's going to tell us more about, and her role there. So, like I said, welcome, Catie. So excited to have you.
Thank you. Thank
Yes.
you.
So tell us about you. What do you do? What do you like? What are you all about?
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll do a little brief history. I'm trying to wrap up with how I got to where I am, based on where I came from. So grew up in a small town farm, and would have spent my whole school life right into my university. Kind of, I guess I didn't realize, following this invisible thread, flow of my life, but recognizing a lot of the stuff was kind of set out for me, kind of conditioned, or what everyone thought was best for me. And I was a performer, I was a perfecter, I was really good at excelling and doing well. And I ended up becoming a teacher. And I'm so thankful that I did. It wasn't one of those things where I think as a child, I was like, when I grow up, I'm going to be a teacher. Like, I knew that. I don't know if I really knew what I was going to do, but I just kept following what I loved. And I loved to play hockey. So I chose schools that had hockey programs. And I chose programs that people told me I would get a job in, STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And when really I really wanted to be active. I actually wanted to be like something physical, something to do with hockey, something to do where I was just doing what I love. I did land a teaching job right away in China, where I went over and started up a brand new school there. Again, loved travel, so kind of used that as why I chose to go there. Came back and ended up walking into a job at Laurentian High School, inner city, where they had this alternate programming of well, I taught hospital care because there was a nursing course on my transcript. And I just loved it because I was teaching them how to make beds. I was teaching them how to take temperatures, really how to communicate, like skills that a lot of these kids hadn't necessarily been taught at home. Fast forward, I ended up, even though I was science math trained, finding that I was going into a classroom all the time where they weren't inspired or they weren't happy to come and see me. And just following that invisible thread, I found myself into co-op, OYAP, dual credit, anything that helps with that transition of high school to whatever you're doing after high school. And I've realized after the course of doing that for the past 10 years, how even a lot of my teaching has changed from that, because here I was for the past, I've been teaching for 20 years, but for the past 12 years, helping kids really decide on what they want to do once they're done school, and realizing that there's only so long I can teach this to kids and not listen to the messaging myself, and really get curious about why am I here? How am I evolving? What am I learning? And how am I growing? It took some people might have said it looked like a complete breakdown. And for me, I guess it's how you decide to look at what a midlife crisis is, 38 to 45, when that time comes in your life where you look at what you've experienced so far, and then you look ahead to see where am I going? What do I want? And I remember really significantly thinking after grade 6 and I was going to middle school that, oh, it's not going to be better than what I just had. Like grade 6 was amazing. How is middle school going to be better? And then middle school, you know, looking ahead to high school, thinking, okay, there's no way that high school is even going to surpass that. Like it wasn't to do with the schooling. I was just loving life. And so each step of the way, even university, I couldn't see how things were going to be better with, you know, my career, and yet I loved it. And so all of a sudden I was at this place where I'm like, is this it? Have I actually reached the climax? Have I reached the top and everything is just downhill from here? And because that's how my body felt. I mean, I had to go through surgery, I had a car accident, kidney stone, all of these things that showed up in the body that I just kept kind of, you know, pushing aside. And while I was off dealing with all that, and once I had completed 8 seasons of Game of Thrones, I decided that it was really time to dig a little bit deeper into my purpose, why I'm here. And it's something that I'm very acutely aware is not taught in our schools. It's not taught with our parenting. It's not anything that we really focus on. And that's what I did is I took, and that's what I'm very passionate about now with creating Willow Wellness. Willow Wellness is a holistic, community-based, we have a brick and mortar business, but with COVID, we've really transitioned into more of a virtual platform, but really with a baseline of community, because everyone as a human being, we're wired for community and connection. We're social beings. How can we connect people so that maybe we don't feel so lonely? We don't feel we're the only ones that are anxious, are stressed, are exhausted, that potentially we need to take this time to go inside, do some inner work. And what better place to do that in a container where other people are doing it as well? So Willow Wellness was really created on the fact that once I was transitioning from coming back from rehabilitating from my surgery, I got on the yoga mat. So I became a yoga teacher trainer. And then from there, I became a transformational life coach. So trained through the International Coaching Federation to look at more of a embodiment. Sorry, that's my new puppy. More of an embodiment piece of how can we actually tap into the wisdom of the emotional body, move beyond the intellectual mind that we stay so focused in. And that led me along the way to also then becoming a breathwork facilitator. Breathwork is just at the cusp of a massive explosion. It's very mainstream in places like Europe or places in the States, but hasn't fully reached Canada here. And this holistic wellness that we did through Willow, because there's 2 beautiful willow trees back here, is that humans are extremely resilient and we have the capacity to be able to heal ourselves, done in a container of other people who are doing it as well. Um, we feel connected, we feel we have a purpose, and with that connection, it's kind of like I think of when you think of you're doing your Unlearning Academy. Really, whatever happened to us as children, we don't need to blame our parents, we don't need to blame our old teachers, our religion, our, you know, whatever kind of things we may have heard or thought. But it is our responsibility to reparent ourselves and give ourselves what we need and want. And so I am, like you, taking a leave from teaching next year to really fully dive into developing actually what's a mind, body, spirit membership, where for a lot of people who have access to their psych benefits, their social benefits, who don't use them, forming a membership where through a community, you'll be able to do a breath work, you'll be able to do yoga practice, movement, you'll be able to tap into, you know, a professional or someone who's a real expert in a certain area to teach us about things like sleep or how to build resiliency or how to get curious, whatever topic we choose to do, but really connecting with people, because so many people are lonely and feel that whatever they're going through is they're the only ones. So that's in a nutshell what or who I am. I define myself really as a reluctant healer. I believe through my story, through my wisdom, through my experience, through life, I have the capacity to be able to help people heal themselves. Not myself doing it, just holding space for them.
Yeah, so I had the opportunity to experience one of those breathwork classes before COVID. Yeah, that would be really bad right now with COVID, all that breathing going on. But it was like people, it's so crazy. I went because I was curious. I wanted to know. I wanted to support you. I wanted to, see what it was all about. And I was in a place in my life where I needed something, and I remember going and just thinking, okay, like I'm assuming that this is what, and I think you even described this at the beginning. You're like, so I thought I was going to go in, I was going to lie on my back, and you were going to be like, breathe in and breathe out and hold your breath. Now let it out slowly. And that's kind of what I thought I was getting myself into. And when people ask me, I don't even know how to describe it. I'm like, it was like the craziest experience I ever experienced, but the most cathartic.
It's
Like,
a great way of describing it. It is. We
yeah,
basically have, I mean, our limbic brain is there for a purpose, but it hasn't necessarily evolved. So what its job to do is to keep us safe.
yeah,
And by keeping us safe and keeping us in control, it means it doesn't necessarily want us to drop into the body because we don't necessarily know what's sitting in the body. And so it's through a series of like masculine breath, where I think it's called an active form of meditation
yeah,
because it's not contemplated. You're not trying to get rid of thoughts. You're actually just trying to force enough oxygen up to the amygdala to allow the psyche, the controlling part, to just come along for the ride. And you may have an intention of what you think you might want to happen, but the body really, whatever is stored there in a cellular level, will percolate up.
yeah,
And we just, I mean, you think of like a 4-year-old child who's so excited about their 4th birthday. Like they're just so excited they're turning 4. And yet we don't have that same excitement when we turn 40.
right.
And when you think of all of the experiences, the sadness, the heartache, the, grief, the anger, the resentment, all of those, emotions that we may have termed bad, because our society, because it's not great to feel that way.
Mm,
If we don't honor those ones, like think of how much we've lived and how much we've experienced, honoring those are a part of you. And if you don't honor those parts, it's basically like denying parts of yourself. So
right.
it really is. I kind of describe it, I mean, as a spirit or a soul retrieval. It's transformative, but it's not talking about, it's not forming the same storyline that we have told ourselves. It's forming new neural pathways, which is neuroplasty, which is how we can really make change in our life. Stop some of those patterns,
Yeah,
make new patterns, and really just have more compassion for ourselves, and just more self-love.
yep. No, I recommend it to everyone to give it a try. All right. Well, I invite people on here to talk a little bit about education. You kind of alluded to your educational experience. Sounds like it was a pretty good one. So, what for you as a student? What was school like?
Well, school for me was actually a measure for me to please people.
Yeah.
Like school for me, I don't ever really remember being inspired about my learning, or super excited. I was a social being. I love, and I still do love people. So I loved that part of it. I think if anyone ever asked me about what my favorite part of school was, it was always recess or lunch or gym.
Yep.
Those were my favorite parts. I loved art, but somewhere along the line, and I loved music. Um, but what I found was with school for me, when I say it was easy enough for me because I could perform. So much from the fact that I think I could actually trick people into thinking that I was always thinking I was tricking people and that I was smarter than I really was. But I believe it's because I had a high emotional intelligence, and that isn't valued with the same as IQ or the mark based, or the these numbers that we put out there. So school to me was a place to perform. And because I did well, I got really good feedback back. Like, it was like affirmative for me, and so it pushed me to do more, it pushed me to keep climbing. So I guess in that aspect, that sounds negative. And for me, I feel it is. And I feel that's what our system does bring up. Um, but the part that I truly did love was relationship um, forming and figuring out conflict. But that again wasn't necessarily in the actual classroom, right?
Right.
That was that I was figuring out in between in my recesses or in the, in the breaks and things like
Yep.
that, lunch hour.
Yep.
So that was probably the most useful tool.
Awesome. So what do you think is good about our, I mean, you're in education and you're kind of coming out, you have children. What's good about our education system?
I would say the colleagues that I work with are extremely caring. I do truly feel that people who go into this profession care about kids, whether they care about maybe making the situation better than what they experienced, or whether they feel they love the experience and want to share it with others. I truly believe that that's what's good about. I also believe all the other things that like art, like photography, co-op, obviously, um, dance, anything where you're using the right side of the brain, where you're not necessarily just using, all of that prefrontal cortex or the, parts of the brain that we memorize or, would do in certain cognitive type functions. So I do love that there is variety. Um, there was, I don't know if it's still going to exist post COVID.
Yeah.
I've noticed it that going out, but I do like at our school, we have so many trades related courses, the manufacturing, the house building, the auto mechanics, outdoor ed. Like I do really love all of those components of the system.
Awesome. Yeah, this seems to be a general uh, consensus on that answer is it's the people that are really passionate about what they're doing and very caring, like you said. So do you think and you have made reference to some of the negatives, but what do you think that our school system is failing our youth or some of our youth?
Oh, I would say the majority. I can't even think of I mean, it's certainly rewarding highly anxious kids who can go inward and can perform and perfect and memorize and um, fit into a box.
Yeah.
So it supports that aspect of learning. Um, I don't know. It's like, I mean, a lot of the system that's there was what I had when I went there, and I went, oh my goodness, well, I'm 45, right? So I don't feel that it's evolved. Like if you took a cell phone from the 1980s and then took a cell phone today, it's, severely different. And I feel like, I mean, change is necessary. And some of the educators maybe aren't so comfortable with that. Okay. And then I think it's also hard if you think of sometimes parents push back on things like that and kids really too.
Yep.
So change is difficult, but change is necessary because that is how we grow. I don't feel our education system has grown based on where or what we do after school, after high school.
Hmm.
We collaborate. We have hard conversations. We support each other. I mean, typically, I know there's workplaces that maybe aren't conducive to that as well. But in order for us actually to move forward in this world, we need to learn how to co-create. We need to learn how to collaborate, and we need to actually follow and learn about things that were inspiring for us. Because I think of what I have thought of when I would go to teacher professional development, which is always typically about assessment evaluation. Okay. So much time is directed to assessment and evaluation. And I think of that in our actual like workplace. I'm all about having a performance appraisal where we actually are able to give and receive feedback. I think that's important. um However, student voice, even though we may say it's a mandate from our board or we may say it's a mandate from the province to have the student voice, there's not really student voice involved in any form of the curriculum. Even comes down to, I think of like when I use the dance program at our school, um, the theme that is chosen for, you know, the dance program is generated by the teachers. You know, the choreography for the most part is generated by the teachers. And I understand, because a teacher may feel, well, that's what I need to be able to do to be able to feel like I'm doing my job. Um, but song selection, there is some student voice, like we're noticing some shift of that coming in, but just on a general level, my kids, my own 4 kids, are not inspired by the education system. There's just a lot of gaps about creating um, passion, for creating self-awareness, for actually helping with self-development. It's just kind of blanket for everyone, and you either sink or swim.
Yeah. You made mention to when you were in school that there are certain things that are not valued in school, like having a good social emotional um, sort of mindset or the IQ. Do you think that there are other things? Like I know for me, my focus with the with the program that I've created is to and um, find out every kid's brilliance. What are they brilliant at? And let's focus on that instead of what they're not good at. Which
Mhm.
and how do we sort of sneak in some stuff to help them with those things that they aren't good at by using what they are good at, you know, that type of thing. Like,
Yeah, area of genius, we call it, right? But I mean, simple measures. I think it's Ashley Stahl who does a podcast on careers, and she basically says we are so focused on kind of thinking about, you know, what we want to do, whether we say, you know, how much money we're going to make, or being at the best workplace or the best school, or whatever qualifier we use to get to think that we're going to land, you know, the job or the career of our dreams. We overlook just really simple questions like, number one, what are you just naturally good at? Like, what are you naturally good at? And the second question that we forget to ask is, what do friends or family or other people actually notice that you're good at? What do they come to see you about? Or what did they, you know, what do you notice that you're in conversation about with? Or what are they asking you about? And then the third really question is like, what's holding you back? Like, what's stopping you from doing that? And we've just been told that, oh, if you love art and you're so great at it, you're not going to be able to make a living out of that.
yeah,
Where does that belief come from? Like, where does that conditioning come from? Like, and I don't know if we actually bust through a lot of those enough, or we get them to get really curious. I was thinking about it today as I was driving, like even teaching kids what thoughts are and how thoughts arise.
mm-hmm.
And then what do we do with those thoughts? And if those thoughts aren't actually serving us, what can we do about that? And so definitely some of those things would be so key, to have kids aware of or know about. Same thing, like so many things too that when we think about our generation would have kept very secretive as well. You know, when you think about this new sex ed curriculum that came out, and they don't even cover in any of the sex ed things about pleasure, which again, I don't know if you can talk about this on this sort of thing, but really, yes, we are animals, and yes, you know, sex is for procreation, but let's talk about the pleasure hormones. Let's talk about those hormones actually show up as a liking and wanting when you're eating like a delicious piece of lemon cake, or they show up when, you know, we don't talk about the polyvagal system, the fight or flight response. Like, we just don't talk about why we do things, or why we like things, or why we're good at things, or why things come easier to me than they do to you. So liking and wanting, I think, are really big things that we don't tap into.
Yeah. So you made reference to the fact that change is needed. It is necessary. You know, you gave the cell phone analogy, and you said, you know, some teachers are not ready for it, some students are not ready for it, some parents, like society in general, is not ready for it because change is hard. Um, but what if we are to move forward? What do people need to unlearn? What do they need to be able to comprehend or be okay with in order to move forward in the school system?
Oh, I think they have to be able to really have conversation. I think that we have to get rid of the word should. I think that we have to get rid of reasons like things like right or wrong, black or white, good or bad. All of these kind of ways that we have gone about thinking as to what's best, and question why. I mean, I've heard people talk about COVID and how awful it's been, and how, they're so glad when things just get back to normal. And I think what we look back to prior to that, prior to COVID, normal was we're open 24/7. We are go, go, go. We're overscheduled, overmaxed, like over consuming, not good to our environment, not good to our bodies, massive rates of addiction, depression, anxiety. And so I'm not sure where people thought post or going back to normal, how before was some form of a utopia. I think that people need to move out of the fact that, oh, it can't be better, or it's not going to be better. That's what our psyche does, is keep us in this doubting, this sort of small version, which then makes us risk averse. And again, that's just conditioning. If you had a parent who was fearful, because their parent was fearful and stuff like that, then uncertainty or unknown
Mm-hmm.
is scary. And yeah, we don't look about, what about if it's the opposite? What about if it's something better that we could never have possibly imagined if we didn't actually just try it?
Mm-hmm.
So it's asking really good questions. It's asking a lot of how, and tell me why you think that way.
Yep.
It's having difficult conversations. It's having, and I mean, they say A Course in Miracles is actually just a change in perspective,
Right.
right? And so I'm not trying to change your mind, but here is my perspective, and then see where that lands. And if you're so opposed to it, if there's a lot of resistance, I always think question that resistance.
Mm-hmm.
What's that resistance? Where does that resistance come from?
Right.
And kind of unpack some of that sort of stuff,
Yeah.
because that's what we want this generation to do. We want them, we always want the generation coming, forward, and they're already doing that. People have a hard time with saying, oh, they're so entitled, they're so, this and that. I'm like, they have just watched us go through this, and they're actually saying, I don't want to do it that way.
Yeah.
I don't want to live like my parents do, or I don't want to be stuck in a job. What are the stats? Like, it's something like men in North America, like 75% of them are in jobs that they don't want to be in.
Right.
And so I think it's actually getting a bit more curious as
Yeah.
adults,
It's
really looking at reparenting ourselves and unlearning some of our conditioning.
it's interesting. I was having a conversation with my mom, who is 70, and she's a friend who's about 10 years, well, actually maybe 15 years younger than her, and has kids that are in their 20s. And the one is huge into acting, and was in New York, went to school, came back. He now lives in Southern Ontario, and he's finding it hard, obviously right now, even harder with COVID, to find a job or whatever. And she's saying, his dad offered to find him a real job, you know, and he just won't take it. And I know for a fact that that real job would kill him, right? Like,
Well, and let's talk about that. Like, what does that mean, a real job?
yeah, I
A
know.
real job meaning what? That you are doing
Nine to
something.
five, getting paid.
Ah,
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
right.
making good money. In Hamilton, it's often in the steel industry, which,
Mm.
I mean, whoever wants to do that, if that's your passion, that's fantastic. But if
Yeah,
I,
I think indicator of success is really happy.
yeah,
Really, right, really. I mean, we're in this life, you have, one go at it. It was in, and even when I think about whatever job, even as a parent, it was my two girls who said, I don't want to be a mom because you have to give up your life. And I thought, wow, that's the actual blueprint that I'm setting. Like, that, me as an individual, I'm conditioning you to not put yourself first.
right, yeah,
And so I do say, when it comes to learning, when it comes to your life, to really just keep pursuing things that you want to learn about, or that inspire you, or that make you happy,
yeah,
um, is really how we need to reframe this.
yeah. If you could change one thing This is hard in education. What would it be? It's a hard question.
I do think if we remove marks, I
Yeah.
do think if we remove marks, oh my goodness, it would be learning for learning,
I
you
just,
know?
you know what? I just finished, I was just telling you before we were on here, this program, the Social Change Makers program. I've done 2 sessions, and between, actually, we've ran 4 sessions in total. And between that, we've had over 40 kids. You know, they started in April and some have gone through the summer, who have showed up because they wanted to learn. There are no marks. There is no, I mean, I've created sort of my own curriculum. Like, we have kind of what we're doing. And we focus on reflection. We have a lot of one-on-ones with feedback. You know, we talk about, with the boys that they've actually been with me for the last 18 weeks, we just had a conversation about, you know, them at the beginning of the program to where they are now. And it's amazing. Like, there's no stress. You know, if they screwed up, who cares? Like, whatever. What did I learn from it? So I've been trying to put into practice the whole going gradeless thing, but when you're working with Ontario curriculum and marks and whatever, I mean, it's possible to try, but it's not the same as really not having the marks. And
No, I think probably the second, what I have moved into, which seems to work really well, is a really good dialogue about where do you feel your mark lands,
yes,
and having that dialogue with the student. And often the student is bang on with where they feel they need to grow,
yep,
areas of strengths. And I don't even do the shit sandwich, right? I mean, because most people just then focus on like the crap,
yeah,
and really, like, where are areas that you still, you need to grow.
yeah,
And and really honing in on what did you find out about yourself
yeah,
that like surprised you,
yep,
or you're excited about. I move away from even talking about proud, because I think that's even kind of loaded, that it's kind of
right,
confirmation that I was good or something.
yep,
um yeah, so that's a piece that has been, I think, an in between of what I do. And then so it's like when the kid gets their mark, there's never any surprise though,
yep.
because they've actually had a part in it, right?
Oh
So
yeah,
it's like, and so that's kind of in between, I guess. But no, I would love to see marks just gone.
yeah, fair enough. All right. Well, before we find out where we can get all the good details about where you are and a little wellness and everything, um, we ask, well, I guess I ask a question that came from the kids that I've been working with. We want to know, because part of the program is really focusing on what am I good at. And so we ask everybody at the end of our podcast, what is your superpower?
My superpower is that I am a connector. So I'm a connector, and I'm intuitive. I actually I go on gut and heart.
Yep.
And through that, I'm able to create a space where people feel safe and feel seen. And so that vulnerability allows other people to just take off their mask, and to be a bit more authentic as well, show your shadow side. I always say we're really comfortable with showing 97% of ourselves to the world, but that 3%.
Yeah.
And so I do believe I have a gift just by being me, that I was just born this way. I think that's the thing, is that, you're good enough just as you are. These gifts that we have actually are already there. So that, I believe, is my superpower. I just have been a bit of a reluctant healer about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and everybody that knows you is so lucky and so fortunate to have you, and to have you give them, like you said, the space to do that, and to break down the walls and the barriers, and really see each other for who they are and be okay with it. So
Yeah.
I thank you for that.
Uh, Well, I thank you for all of what you are doing because it's amazing. My daughter is in on this next, your next
I'm
term.
so excited.
And I know I'm excited for her to work with you. I'm most excited for her to actually just feel seen and just as she is too in her schooling.
Yes, it's going to be amazing. So if people want to follow along with what you're doing, get in touch with you, learn more about Willow Wellness, where can they
I
get
would say just go to our website. So our website is www.willowwellness, but there's not the W like WW in the middle. So it's
that?
Willow, WILLOW, and then right into Elness, ELLNESS.ca. So
Okay.
we're at www.willowwellness.ca. And we're just going through a website rebrand, like as of like it'll be out next week, but beautiful offerings and programs for people to just unpack and reconnect and I think kind of maybe unlearn. I'll use your
Yeah.
term of
Yeah, for
unlearn
sure.
some of those and also really connect because that's what we want to do is be able to connect people with people like you who are looking that we want to, you know, do a different form of schooling than that or that we want to actually work with a, you know, a physiotherapist who has the whole approach to it, that there might be something beyond just this pain that maybe I need to work with someone else to go through this part. So really connecting mind, body, spirit. And that is connecting people with others in the community who are doing all of this and serving really and living out their life purpose.
Yeah, amazing. And just for those who are watching, Willow Wellness is located in Richmond, Ontario. If you're, you'll get all that information, and I will definitely put the website in the.
Yeah, put the website. They can find me on Facebook too, because I'm a professional coach as well. So I do transformational work and usually using the, you know, breath work. Um, so yeah, my Facebook as well, I can give you. And of course, Willow Wellness.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Catie.
Thank you for having me.